takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she wears the crown?
Okay, good morning. Welcome, Florencia, to the Magnolias. And before we start, let's just go around, introduce ourselves. I'm Darcy Winslow. I was one of the founding members of the Academy for Systems Change, and the Magnolias is a project under the Academy for Systems Change. And before that, I was with Nike for 21 years. So Kim, I'll throw it over to you.
Good morning, Florencia. It's very nice to have you with us this morning. My name's Kim. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, so not too far from where you are. And I live in both Colorado and Baja California Sur. My work is with Colorado State University and an educational center that we have here in Todos Santos in Mexico. And I will ask Jackie to go next.
Welcome, Florencia. It's brilliant to be with you today. My name is Jackie, and I live, as I told you, outside of Chicago, but I'm originally from India, born in Bombay, and raised in various countries around the world. So my history has been that I have been involved in business for most of my life, and with an interest for conscious leadership and how a shift in global consciousness can shift the attitudes and values of all cultural stakeholders to a more sustainable and flourishing world. And I will throw it to Anne.
Good morning, everyone, and Florencia in particular. I'm Anne Marie Allen, and let's see, first of all, I'm located in Oregon as well, near Corvallis. A lot of my work history has been in big corporations or in consulting to large organizations, although the last, 10 years, it's been more nonprofit and cross-sector. So I've really been focused on my passion, which is collaborating across boundaries and how seemingly ordinary people come together to achieve extraordinary results. So that's what I'm interested in. So welcome, Laura.
Hi, Florencia. My name is Laura Schmidt-Olabisi. I'm an associate professor at Michigan State University in the Department of Community Sustainability. And I do a lot of work on climate change, agriculture, and food security, both in the United States and in West Africa. I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Hi, Florencia. I'm Sarah Hepner. I'm in Montreal, Canada, actually in Toronto right now. And I work as a graphic facilitator, which is how I originally connected with Darcy and did quite a bit of work with the Academy for Systems Change. My work has focused probably in the last 5 years with folks who want to make the world a better place. So doing that with this particular group of women is really a privilege, and I'm thrilled to have you joining us today.
Hi, Florencia. I'm in beautiful downtown North Bethesda, which is outside of Washington, D.C. Just returning from a very uplifting and sad event in Dallas, Texas. What a different world that is. Of a really, really dear friend who passed away. So I'm in a little bit of a space this morning because it was shocking and last minute. It's Darcy's fault. That's why I'm here. It's Darcy's fault. That's why I'm here. You know, it came from a curbside happy hour. I think we both had some kind of Willamette Pinot Noir, did we not? Something, it could have been, had to have been something from Oregon, because we like Oregon wines. And a conversation about the power of women and how a women's group needed to come together to serve humanity. I think that's the basics of it. Don't you think, Darcy? Yeah. I actually put it better than I probably could have.
And Denise does amazing work with women and speaking with impact.
Yeah, it was, that was the kind of weekend it was. I was with a lot of powerhouse women. There were men there too, but the women that this woman attracted are some powerhouse women. So some new connections that will certainly be a part of our going forward at some point in time. So it's good to meet you. Good to be here. I'm going to go into listening mode.
And I believe we have Tanya on the phone.
Hi, how are you all? I'm just pulling up at the house. The timing was perfect. My name is Tanya Davis, and I live in Wheaton, Illinois. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, and I am here because of it's as Denisha says, Jackie Kambata's fought, my dearest friend over there, and she understood we both have a desire to provide access to everyone and to make the world a better place. And that is my passion. And most of my work is around nonprofit work and with girls in lower income communities, helping them discover their purpose. And as I've been called a privilege buster. So that's my passion.
Welcome, Tanya. And Roberta, over to you, and then we can kick it off with Florencia.
Wonderful. Thanks, Darcy. And a big warm magnolia welcome to Florencia. As you all know, Florencia leads the SDG Academy, which is the flagship educational initiative of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. And her mission is outreach and collaboration to scale up the impact of higher education for the SDGs. So some background on Florencia. She's a sustainability and educational professional and international attorney. She's licensed to practice in Argentina and New York. She's a strategic thinker and networker. I first met Florencia in 2014 when she was amplifying the impact of UN Prime, which is the Principles for Responsible Management Education, in more than 90 countries at the time. And the UN's SDGs hadn't been born yet. I embraced the global goals as a platform for my Aim to Flourish initiative, even before the UN voted on them. I thought of them as the world's must-do list. And with the help of Florencia at Prime, made them into a teaching assignment in management schools globally. She is always an inspiration. And to go just a little deeper into her background, Florencia was a consultant at the International Center for Transitional Justice. And there she advised on issues of post-conflict societies, addressing human rights violations through truth, memory, and reparations for justice, which I think is really important for everyone to know about her. One more level of worldly talents to share. And that is beyond her law degree, which was magna cum laude, of course. She graduated from the Conservatory of Music as a professor of piano. So Florencia is now tackling the world's most ambitious agenda by teaching and inspiring the world to achieve the SDGs, or the global goals, as for shorthand. And so let's get to it, Florencia, in terms of, September 2015 is when they were voted on. And if you can help us understand the importance of the global goals as an organizing principle for the world, and its important mission that we all relate to, which is leave no one behind. So tell us how you do what you do.
Yes, I'll be happy to do all of that. And just want to say first, thanks so much for this warm welcome, for all of your words. And I'm so thrilled. Thank you, Roberta, for bringing me, Marcy, and all of you. And I'm just very, very, very excited. Also hearing from all of you what you have said, which resonates so much with my, my purpose, my mission, and just really trying to make the world a better place. So I just wanted to say that. And I'm happy maybe if I might pull my slides, because I thought that it will probably be helpful to share.
That would be great. And then we'll open it up to questions after you get us all revved up about, why the SDGs are important for us to learn about.
Absolutely. Let me share. Okay, great. Yes, so I threw some slides there together, and I think, you guys have so much experience, I feel, on such a, amount of issues. So many things I'm sure we can talk and look at really in different perspectives, because this is a fascinating, ambitious, as you know, huge agenda that we have in front of us. And as SDG 17 put it very clear, is about partnership, because no one has it all figured out, and it's impossible for any single actor, state, or human being to tackle this. And so here are the SDGs. So I'm sure you have seen them. You probably have your pin on the SDGs that I didn't bring today. So these were the SDGs, as Roberta said, were agreed on all of the member states of the UN in September 2015. And I mean, you see the breadth of issues that are covered here, which they're all very integrated and interrelated. So it's impossible to make progress on one without really like affecting the others, and there's really important that we look at this agenda in a holistic way. A very important thing about the SDGs is, as you probably know, well, it was not just about the why and the what that is so important here, right? Why we need this agenda, which is basically, this is a lighthouse, is really a framework, is a place that we can all look together to move forward, right? And if you think about your own life, your family, or moving an organization or a country or the world, without the common framework and a place to look up to and to look for that progress is quite impossible, right? Without a strategy, without an alignment, so together. So the why is extremely important. The what, and you can see this in how we cover all of these aspects, from no poverty to zero hunger, to equality, to peace, to human rights issues, and of course, climate change and being much more kind to our fellow human beings, but also to nature. So important. Governance is another aspect to it, right? And partnerships and so on. And making sure that we are able to reform the way that our economy works, to ensure that, yes, we do have progress on economy. We do need to make sure that everyone has decent work and employment and so on. But we do need to be very sure that social and environmental issues are also integrated, right? So there's a what aspect that is so important, the why, the what, but the how as well. And an important aspect to this was that these goals were consulted and agreed upon, as I said, all member states, which is a quite robust consultation with the private sector, academia, and non-profit. And this was really the first time that a process, imperfect, of course, because we're human beings, we managed to get it to the point that there was actual massive consultation, and we achieved to this level to say, well, this is the world that we want. One in which doesn't leave anyone behind, and in which we're able to achieve these 17 goals, accompanied with 169 targets, and many more indicators. So as I said, this is a very, very ambitious agenda, but I believe, and I share Roberta's love for this agenda, because I think without, as I said, having that clear path of where we're going and that common understanding it's already very challenging to try to achieve that world without something like this. I think is very, very difficult and impossible to think about it. So this is, as I said, wonderful, I think, agenda. But I think, when we have a conversation with Roberta, there were a couple of things that we said that we wanted to cover. One is why this is so important. Then we wanted to cover a bit of where we are with it. And I must say, like at the SDSN, I will tell you a bit of my work in some minutes. My colleagues that managed the monitoring of the SDGs launched a report last week. So I was literally like wrapping my head around of this last version that was out last week. And I want to share some of that I learned. And then I really want to open up and then discuss with you, based on your experience, because I think if something that is so important about the Sustainable Development Goals is not just the fact that the aspiration and the normative aspect of it, which I love it. I'm a lawyer by training, so I do believe in the ethics and the normative aspect of it, textological, of doing the right thing, and this is the right thing. But there's also really a business case for it. I mean, this is the reality right now. This is where we are. This is about survival too, and the only way that we're going to be able to sustain our life on Earth and making sure that we have our needs covered, but also sustainable development is about how the next generations will also be able to meet their own needs, is being able to get on board with this agenda and making it happen. And the survival goes to different levels. It's not just about humankind itself, but also when it comes to the businesses, our own careers, we do need to align, because by aligning to the SDGs, by contributing to the SDGs, we're also making our own businesses, our own organizations, and our own careers more sustainable. Because I think, unless we're able to align and make sure that, basically Just an example, like there's so many needs that are posed here in the new society, in societies in which we live, that if we align and we're able as a company to provide solutions to those needs, if we're able to, in our own operations, to have our strategy aligned to the SDGs in a way that we respect labor, issues, human rights issues, that we don't engage on corruption issues, and furthermore, we are an ethical company, and we serve the society, we have obviously much more chances to survive and stay in business. So that very quickly on the SDGs. So here, just very quickly as well, on the MDGs, I'm sure you have heard of them. These were basically the equivalent, in a way, framework that was in place since 2000 to 2015. And that's when in 2015, at the expirations of the Millennial Development Goals, so the MDGs, the SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, came on board. There's a major and quite significant difference between these two. And I'll say these 8 MDGs were targeted to mostly the global south. We're looking at, lower income countries, those that are lagging behind. You guys have to achieve this, not really looking at the whole world, because, like sustainable development issues, and we're going to see how even those that are ranked the highest, those countries that are ranked the highest on sustainable development, there's no country in the world that is on track right now to fulfill the SDGs. So, and there was not the consultation that I was mentioning when it comes to the SDGs. So the SDGs is a much more sophisticated agenda, global, looking at much more sophisticated issues, really like looking at, for instance, when we think affordable and clean energy, we're talking about systemic change. We're talking about major differences on the type of system and societies that we're running right now. While the MDGs are extremely important, of course, you look at the topics. I mean, eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, improve maternal health, reduce child mortality. But if you think about it, it's much more basic in a way that we should absolutely already be, have achieved on that. And of course, there was a lot of progress. We already have 50% of extreme poverty was reduced by 2015 and then continued to be improved after. And of course, COVID also reversed some of the trends that we had there. But then anyways, I just wanted to highlight that big difference between those two. I'll move on and I probably can share. So just maybe to stop there and I introduce a bit of Sustainable Development Solutions Network, which is the organization in which I'm working right now. So as Roberta said, I'm heading the SDG Academy, which is the educational flagship initiative of SDSN. So my work is on educational issues, and I'm going to share a bit of that. And we create wonderful resources, I must say. I know I'm biased, but they're really wonderful. Massive open online courses, podcasts, and videos that can be integrated in teaching and learning that are very helpful for people that are in academia, but also for any learner around the world. And I'm going to tell you about how our strategy, and we really want to reach millions of people around the world. So we're going to talk about the Academy in a minute, but on the SDSN, so Sustainable Development Solutions Network, or SDSN, was launched in year 2012, also before the SDGs, by Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and with the mission of mobilizing science and academia to achieve the SDGs that they were about to be born, and the Paris Climate Agreement. So at our organization that is led by Professor Jeffrey Sachs, which I mean, it's great when you admire your boss, and he's amazing, and he's such a rigorous, of course, he's a professor academic, but also very bold. And I think that's what we need when it comes to this agenda. We need to be rigorous and we need to be bold. So at the SDSN, we have a research and policy side of it, which creates this wonderful report, for instance, the World Happiness Report that I'm sure you have heard of. And there's a lot of work about, food, agriculture, energy, data, and digitalization, and so on. We cover a lot of the SDGs. SDSN is a network organization with, at the moment, more than 1,400 institutions around the world, academia and research centers. We have the SDG Academy, and then we also have a SDSN Youth Initiative that is led by youth, which is really quite wonderful. Because it's not always the case. But anyway, so just to give you a very quick kind of presentation of who we are. In the context, as I said, of research and policy, that's where we create this and I say we, but it's my colleagues that create this report. So they have, of course, a peer review methodology that, I'm happy to circulate with you afterwards. But just to give you a couple of the main outcomes of the report, as I said, it was launched last week. There is a webinar with the launch, and they can, they will describe much better than me the main outcomes. But I wanted to share with you a bit of it because I think it's quite telling of where we are and what we need to do. At the moment, as you can see, this is the kind of top 10 of the countries. Finland was number 1. Interestingly, also, Finland ranks number 1 in the World Happiness Report, which it shows the correlation between sustainability and happiness, right? And the happiness report is also a very interesting one. It measures how people perceive and feel around many issues, from trusting their governments and governance to actually, their health, having health care and health insurance and so on, education, and many things that people care and how they perceive their own life and their own happiness. So you see that the Nordic countries here are clearly in the top. I want to show you a couple more things here. Finland is the first time that ranks number 1. It has always been on the top 3, I believe, or 4. And this is the 6th edition. So it has been every year. This is a report that is done by SDSN with the support of Bertelsmann. So, but just to tell you a bit, because the main outcomes, so the SDGs took a hit really last year of progress because of COVID. So we see that we were progressing, right? And then you see in the world average, there is a decline. And even the OECD countries, you see the decline, right? So this has been across the board, even in those countries that actually are in a better position when it comes to the progress on the SDGs. So I want to show you here, there are also other shows on the progress based on the different, regions or also income groups. And you will notice that, of course, those countries that are low income countries, they have more difficulty and they need more support, right? And then, so you see there is a bit of correlation here as well between income countries more on the top and generally being able to progress. And here you have the average as well, right, of the world. And then I also wanted to show you here what are the countries with the greatest and the increase and the decrease in terms of the SDG index. So those that score negatively were Brazil, Tuvalu, and Venezuela. Those that make the largest increase last year were Bangladesh, Cote d'Ivoire, and Afghanistan, which I thought that was interesting. So when it comes to the topics themselves, as I mentioned before, so no poverty was one of the SDGs that were improving more dramatically, and this was kind of a trend that was coming, as I said, from the MDGs, with the extreme poverty being reduced significantly. But then, and there was this projection of decline by 6% by 2030. However, COVID led to a reversal. One of the interesting caveats that I saw that they put in the report was that this is the fundings at the moment, but of course there is a lot of data missing still, right? So the impact of COVID in the progress of the SDG is not totally basically assessed, right? There are some understanding, but there's more data missing. Of course, we all have seen how COVID accelerated the rollout of digital technology, but still there is a huge gap when it comes to access, particularly between developed countries and the rest of the world. Major societal transformation that was kind of clearly understood. So because this index is not just basically measuring, which is important to measure when it comes to the progress, but it also measures the spillovers, which is basically there are some countries that are making important progress on the SDGs, yet they are outsourcing basically, and they're spilling over to other countries. For instance, when they have tax haven, they're basically putting externalities on other countries to make it more difficult for them to, So they also measure that. But an important aspect is also that this is really a report for action, and then provides recommendations for countries on what are the policies that they need to implement to make the shift needed to achieve the SDGs by 2030. So an important aspect of that was, for instance, achieving universal quality of education and healthcare, clean energy and industry, sustainable land use and cities. We know that half of the population lives in cities now. Access to digital technology across the board for health, health monitoring, for finance and payment, and so on. So what else I want to say? So yeah, that's kind of some of the key findings there. Of course, an important aspect, of course, is financing, right? We know that the SDGs, apart from partnerships, which are very important, the financing is extremely important. And when it comes to, as I said, developing countries, particularly, it's important to make sure that they have, fiscal space for that. All what it entails as well of, just making sure that when it comes to, for instance, we're looking at Nordic countries in the top of the rank, and we see that Nordic countries most generally have about 50% of the GDP in taxes, right? I mean, that's very different from other countries, including the one that we live, right? And again, so these are very important policy discussions that have to happen in terms of how we make sure that the funding for the SDGs is acquired. Show you here quickly. This is an example, and I will really encourage you to take a look at the report. And as I said, this was out last week, so I'm still wrapping my head around all this. But basically here they show you is green. Of course, it's like progress. Yellow is kind of in the middle, and then red is no progress at all. And then it also has the arrow. Just to kind of give a quick look here. I mean, let's look for Finland, right? These are all OECD countries. So let's look at Finland, which is supposed to be, and is the top rank here. And you see that there's also some oranges here. And interestingly, red, you have responsible consumption and production and climate action, right? So even those ranking in the top, number one, we see that there's no country in the world that is at the moment really progressing on all of the SDGs. So there's huge challenges. And importantly, to the point of one of you that I don't know.
Florencia, it looks like it's in the red for climate action down the whole, mean, with the exception of Colombia.
Oops.
And that's really alarming.
Yes, correct. And yes, and I was going to say to Jacqueline points, I think Jacqueline was let's talk about conscious leadership. Mm-hmm. I love that the Prime Minister of Finland, when she learned about this, and actually one of her ministers was in the launch of the report. She wasn't there herself, but she said, she took note of the report, and yes, great, we're ranked number one. But she acknowledges that, that there's a lot of work ahead. I don't remember exact words, but it was basically something like that, there's so much work ahead of us. And she mentioned obviously climate change. So I thought it was, great to have this female leader, strong, but she's, she didn't brag about the report. She was like, actually, yes, we still have so much to do. This is, just a first step.
Can you jump in, Florencia, with a little bit about where the US is on the...
Yes, I don't have it right here, but let me tell you, because I looked at it and it was number, I believe, 36. I can pull it in the report, but I think it was number 36. Give me 1 second. I had it.
It's like we're not showing up.
Yeah, US. Can you see?
Mm-hmm.
So OECD country. So here you have the average performance by SDGs. Here, and the 32 of 165. And look at this, the yellows and the oranges. This is actually very sad. Yes, so we have a lot of work to do here.
Nothing green, huh?
No. But I have a question to follow up on this, because I'm intrigued by the comment you made, Florencia, that, is it just a correlation or causation? What's the connection to Finland being so happy and also being the most successful, even though they've got a ways to go too? And then I think of the US and all the consternation of however many years. Are we going down, the US, or is this an improvement? I mean, I'm just curious if there's I'm probably trying to connect dots. I shouldn't, but I thought I'd ask the question.
I think those are brilliant questions. And I honestly don't know if I have the answer. We can talk about that together, because, this is a very complex question. So to the US, I mean, by looking at this, as I said, I'm not the person that produces this, it's my colleagues. And but you see that, for instance, an SDG 6, SDG 9, SDG 11, it seems that the trend is positive. So yes, it's yellow at the moment, but we're improving, right? While SDG 10, for instance, reduce inequalities, is red and is down, right? I'll be curious, and I would love to have my colleagues here, and we can organize that another time, to ask them exactly, because they will know. Now, this comes from official and non-official sources, some are from the UN, and they have a very robust methodology on getting all of this sorted out. So, but I mean, for my take on this, and also as citizen of this country, but also from Argentina and Italy. I have, it saddened me a lot because this is a country that, is so wealthy, and I think we can do so much better, right? And I think the reduced
I was hoping, Florencia, that climate action, because of COVID, that there would be improvement. But even there, we're decreasing in America in terms of impact. It's a little depressing.
Yes, no, I know. And yeah, it was interesting too, also because last year internally, we have a sustainable officer kind of institution, we created in our office, that every month 2 colleagues take the hat of a sustainable mobility officer, and we have organized activities and so on. So it was my turn last year, and with a colleague, we brought actually one of the colleagues from the Principle for Responsible Management Education. And she brought us, maybe some of you have done it, but it's the carbon literacy training. And she has some really cool simulators. And, you can change different variables if you are, changing energy sources, and, if you if population doesn't increase so rapidly, or, really you can make kind of policy decisions there, kind of think about how it will affect different variables. And we were putting 100%, 0%, basically, just trying to shift everything. And even like that, the curve was really shifting. This really takes major amount of work. So that's why it's so important that we're on the same page with the SDGs, but then the policy. There's so many implications to that, right? To make sure that this is not just, of course, an individual choice, which is important that it is, but it has to be a systemic change, because it shouldn't be also an act of heroism to be sustainable, right? This is something that we need to do together as a society.
I just wanted a point of clarification. Were you referencing the Climate Interactive Simulator, or is there another simulator out there that we should look at?
I don't remember at the moment, but let me look at it, and then I can. First of all, I can look at this, what the simulator is that we use. But also, if you are interested, I can make the introduction. I don't know, Roberta, if you know Petra Moulton Hill. But if not, I'm happy to also make the introduction if you're interested too.
Thank you. Sorry, Laura, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to follow on Florencia's point that last year during COVID, global greenhouse gas emissions fell by only 6%. And that's with a massive change in behavior, right, of almost every person on the planet. So that shows exactly the point of what you're talking about, that individual behavior modification, like not flying, like not traveling, like whatever, is not going to cut it. We focus way too much on that in the United States, in my view. We need to focus on these structural transformations. I think that's a really good point you made. I guess one question I have, and I'm sure that you've dealt with this kind of critique before, any critique with weighted indices like this is that, it doesn't necessarily consider that some things may be more foundational than others. So even going back to that chart, we look at, more sustainable consumerism and climate action are red down the line. And so couldn't you argue that, if that's red, then all of these other things are in jeopardy, right? No matter how green you get on poverty and gender equality and everything, and clean water and everything else, if you don't address that, you're going to reach a tipping point. So how do you talk about that with the SDGs, and how do you understand, are there some that are more foundational than others, or some that are more dangerous than others to ignore,
I think that's a great point. And again, let's talk about that interrelation among the SDGs that I was mentioning before, and I totally agree. I don't know, particularly in this index, how my colleagues consider that. This is very thought through process and methodology, so I'm sure that they consider as much as they considering spillovers among countries. I'm sure that they're thinking kind of that same logic between SDGs, but I'm not totally sure how that is considered in this. But you also look at, and they're very rare that actually have a green, right? So it might be that the reason. I don't know. So, but I'm happy to ask them, my colleagues, and get back on that in terms of the methodology. But absolutely, as you said, basically anything that we touch affects something else, right? So for sure, I don't think we're going to achieve the SDGs totally unless we look very closely to this responsible consumption and of course, climate change.
Florencia, I know I'm biased in terms of my climate action that I really think like, I mean, I think arguably no poverty is like the main SDG, which is why it's number one. But I look at climate action and I see all 17 of them to me revolve around like, it's all there in terms of health and gender equality and reduced inequalities and water and all of it. And so, seeing how poorly, I mean, I didn't expect that really in this report, that there's, without exception, there's nobody in the green on climate action. And you're right. I mean, it's not, I mean, we think as individuals, what can we do for climate action? But it's really so much bigger than any individual. It takes government and business and major players to turn this around, basically save humanity.
Absolutely. And we need to think about every industry. I remember like hearing Jeffrey Sachs talking to some real estate associations some months ago, and they were talking about basically we need to shift, the way that we heat our homes. We need to change, the way that we provide light. So we really need to rethink how we live. And we, as of now, we said that we're going to do that in the 9 left years that we have for 2030. So I just wanted to try to pull, because basically that was a screenshot, this one. Okay, climate change here. You see Bangladesh, Cambodia. So those were like the OECD countries, right? That I was showing kind of, but you see there are some here. So this is, yes, but you see all the OECD's countries? All right. And then here is still OECD. No, so this is OECD, East and South Asia, which are actually those that, for the most part, have made the largest increase. Right.
Florencia, a question kind of similar to Laura's. We had a speaker a couple of weeks ago. She works with women and technology. And interestingly enough, she said goal number 5, gender equity, was, her words, the booster goal for all the others. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts on that might be.
I totally agree. I mean, I think we need to make sure that we're inclusive, and women are over 0.5% of the world, right? And we shouldn't do that just because we're 0.5% of the world. We should do it with all the minorities. I know we are a majority minority in a way, but it's absolutely important to bring women on board, because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's important. We bring a different perspective. It has been, we have seen also how, back to the point of leadership, many countries that were led by female presidents or prime ministers were actually much more resilient, much more peaceful, and much better taken care during the COVID pandemic. Again, not to say that I think, women and men can be absolutely amazing leaders. But I think we do have a space to claim, and not just for our sake, but for the sake of the world. And also we need to make sure that we're inclusive of really, truly everyone. Everyone has different talents and different views that are valuable, and we need to make sure that, we bring them on board. Also youth, oftentimes we think about youth and it seems like there is an issue there to include, and it's not the issue. Of course, the issue as well, right? But it's also the youth themselves, their voices. And I know sometimes it's a bit challenging because there's also this understanding that, millennials are this, are that, and like there are intergeneration also challenges in terms of how we do things, right? And I'm kind of I'm supposed to be an Gen X, but some people put in millennial, I think, or more like Gen X by culture, but it's important that we're able to again, there's a lot about this. It's just about bridging gaps, right, and making sure that we're able to bring everyone on board and leave no one behind. One thing I wanted to say, again, I'm not the expert of this report, so I'm sure there's much more. I mean, there's really so much more to navigate on this, and there are many things that I'm not sure I'm answering totally. So I'm happy to consult with my colleagues on some of the points that you have mentioned. And if you have other questions that you take a look of the report, I'm happy to also point you to my colleagues that produced the report, who will be able to give you all of those much more substantial answers. And also to say that the SDG Academy, which if you allow me to, and I'll be happy to turn on to the SDG Academy. So I tell you a bit about what we're doing in my team. We have produced a mini course on this report because this methodology is also used at the regional and local level. So there are many of these SDSN members that I was mentioning, and networks that we have at the SDSN, that they're taking the lead on using this type of methodology to understand better the regions and local contexts and see how best address the SDGs in those places. So back to the slides. Yeah, would it be okay if I tell you a bit more about this? Okay, great.
Florencia, may I ask you a question? Please. I think it's really fascinating, and it makes perfect sense that there's a correlation in Finland between them doing well with the SDGs as well as the World Happiness Report. What I find interesting is that that could be a particular metric that could be used in philanthropy, right? I mean, if we could understand, I would love to understand more about the criteria for the World Happiness Report and how that lines up, with some of the SDGs, and to then extrapolate that data and put it on, break it down, if you will, into different systems and different areas to look at to make a case for that particular metric. I think that would be really interesting. I'm sure it's already been done, but it would be interesting for our purposes as well.
No, absolutely. And I don't recall exactly the methodology here, but as I was mentioning some of the criteria there in terms of, as I was saying, trust. And this one was a particular interesting, different report because the pandemic, was not in all of the reports before, right? So this one had to be looked at different. And yes, let me ask, because I know that they did a correlation with Finland and they were showing some other top countries. I'm not sure if there's a report bringing the two together. But absolutely, I think it's a very important one, and they have drawn that correlation in several of the reports from previous years as well. Yeah, absolutely. I think another interesting report that paper that I like to. I'm happy to circulate all of this with you, but also there's also these 6 transformations that the SDSN put together. That basically they group the SDGs in 6 different transformations, and I think it's a very interesting framework to look at. It also had to do with the point of apologies, I forgot. I think was it Laura? Well, I'm not totally sure about the foundational issues and make it and how they relate to each other. So I think this 6 transformation is also an important one. Okay, good. Well,
I'd be curious also if those countries are run by women, because Finland is run by a woman, right? So, and those Scandinavian countries are, overwhelmingly women-led.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to met her in person actually last year. Was the last event that I had before the shutdown, and I was really impressed. As you know, she's a young leader. I think she's maybe 35 by now. So she's in early mid 30s, and I found her so humble, down to earth. Even the way that she was consulting with her staff as she was speaking, right? Because she was speaking perfectly, English perfectly, but there were some words or some things, the way she carried herself so naturally, so, and I just found it like, oh, this is so refreshing. It's a human being. But also, then back to your point, Roberta, maybe there's some of these are females, but also we need to think about that it's a long-term, right, issue and long-term shift. So even if we have females right now, and I love also Jacinta Arden, right, and I think she's an amazing leader as well. We need to make sure that this type of leadership stays, right? Whether it's another female, hopefully, because we haven't seen so many females, right? It's starting to be more common, but we really need to make sure that either it's a female or if it's a man again, that this type of leadership is something that we embrace. Okay, so then if maybe I can share with you quickly about the SDGs and SDG Academy, and then if you have other questions or comments or things that you think interesting based on your work, because I would love to hear more about that. So just, I mentioned that the SDG Academy has been creating and curating educational content, mostly online educational content, since 2014. We were called SDSN EDU first, and then we actually changed it to SDG Academy in 2016, which I think was a better change. But we have here, I mean, in this link, I probably will not go there, so because it will take me more time, but we have over 35 open online courses that they're freely available for everyone. It's a documentary style type of video MOOC built with online methodology, meaning like, we know that we are taking Zooms lately and they're an hour and a half, but that actually exhausts us. So these courses were, even though we're pre-COVID, many of them we continue to do since COVID as well. They're built in a way that really try to be appealing and kind of respect the attention kind of time that we can actually follow. So they are divided by modules, typically a 5-6 module course, then divided again by chapters. And these chapters are typically 8 to max 15 minutes. I would say typically 8 to 10 minutes length. And are intermediate master level. They have B-roll. They have, they're very nice. They have graphics, or so I think they're really really good quality. And again, we do everything that we do is in partnership with faculty from around the world. We try to be as much as possible bring like really diversity. These are academic type of MOOCs. I want to bring the diversity in terms of ideas, but also in terms of our speakers. Actually, that's something that COVID helped us a bit is with that, because now we're filming remotely. So it's a bit easier to be able to identify faculty from all over the world. Before it was a bit more challenging. And sometimes I felt we weren't doing as good as we wanted to. And then we have the library, which brings together all of the different videos, but you can search across the board by SEG, by lecture, by keywords. So even though, like in the MOOC, you will take the full MOOC or you will take part of it, with the library, you can really search across all of the videos. So it's quite an easy way to be able to identify content. All of this is, as I said, open. We have shifted to Creative Commons last year. So it's open for the most part, because I'm saying some of the videos we haven't yet able to move it, but we're on the process. And the MOOCs also have assessments, activities, so I think they're really robust content. We are really trying to reach millions. This was by March, so we might be closer to the million now. But you will see here the spike that it took due to COVID, right? So we were actually happy to know that our content was able to help many faculty and also self-learners. Because again, education for sustainable development, an important thing to say, is about lifelong learning, right? So I think that's something else that we need to take into account here. It's not just for higher education, it's also important for everyone. And very quickly, we do some webinars, online lectures. These were some of very cool things that we could do, including in the COVID pandemic. As we were immersed in the crisis, we had, this is one lecture that was by Jeffrey Sachs with Sandway University and UCD in Dublin and Columbia University SIPA. But we also convened workshops with, a lot of different lectures from all over the world, from scientists, and we hosted, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, 4 hours workshops sometimes with scientists from all over the world. That they were talking from the economics to the biology to the how to keeping under control the pandemic and vaccines. So that was really like also a great thing that I was really happy to be able to contribute. And then some fun here. Just wanted to highlight the book club with Jeffrey Sachs. Jeff reads so many books, and he's able to really bring together really great experts. So we're doing now a podcast series. It's a webinar series, a podcast series, and also we have the book club platform. So people can also talk to each other and learn and familiarize with more information and resources about the books. But we launched our podcast, which I am very happy. So also encourage you to take a look. And well, just one more thing I wanted to say, we have a community of practice as well, of people, of partners and members that want to learn together from their challenges, opportunities, and also co-create content and so on. So just wanted to name it there. I know that there's a lot that we cover, and I want to pause for more chat with you. But I just wanted to say that. I probably will stop right there.
Oh, thank you for this, Florencia. One question on the MOOCs and the modules. I didn't know they existed, but I will tap into them. But I'm curious if the modules focus on just one of the global goals at a time, or if they actually show the interconnectedness between one and others.
Absolutely. Let me actually show you. And I hope this was well, because I realized that I spoke so much, and I hope that it was helpful. So here are the courses. So I mean, they're focused on the SDGs, but they're focused on issues, right? So clearly these are interdisciplinary issues. So I think, as you are learning on one topic, you will learn the interrelations with others. You have some of the courses that are more general, like on the SDGs, like the Age of Sustainable Development, for instance, or Sustainable Development, the Post-Capital Order, where you will learn more of the SDGs more broadly. And then, you will be drawn obviously to different aspects of it, from the social to the environment to economic governance and so on. But then, yes, I mean, these are basically, they're not silos, right? They're integrated into the other SDGs.
Wonderful. That's great.
And this one, the one that I was mentioning, measuring sustainable development, that relates to the report that I was mentioning before.
Wonderful. I have one more question, then Roberta, over to you. I was speaking with a woman who is with Community Solutions, which is a US-based organization focused solely on homelessness. And some of their research showed that 14 of the SDGs actually could not be achieved until we eradicate homelessness. And I'm wondering if you've seen that research, and if there are other leverage points like that, which would positively affect so many of the global goals.
Yes, I have not, so I'll be happy if you want to send it my way. Something I wanted to say about the US, there is a network on the US, and Jeffrey Sachs particularly is very committed. He's very, very, sudden, but also really want to see change in the US. And actually many of the books that he's bringing is about particularly the inequality in the US. He brought, for instance, Richard Rothstein on the color of law. And, he's looking very critically in the US. So I just wanted to say maybe organizations like that they're working particularly in the US, there could be a good connection perhaps to work with the SDSN network. That's just one idea. In terms of tipping points, I think, equality is a very important one. And again, we cannot, education is, I know that it's a long-term one, but not so much. You see how people's life, and actually one of the stories I had there was about, we try to collect stories from our learners. We do measure numbers, but we want to measure also how actually taking the courses help in people's lives, how they change their habits at the personal level, but also how that, what are the repercussions in their life, in the work life, and what they can achieve. So I think education is a very important one in the long term, but also in the short and medium term too. I think we need a major reskilling of people right now to be able to achieve the SDGs. But of course, no one can study if they don't have a safe place to sleep, if they don't have food in their table. It helps. I come from Argentina. It's a developing country. But oftentimes I felt really unprotected in the US, even though I had especially as I was looking for a job. And then of course you have a job, you have insurance. But I had situations in which I had to take my kids. I have 3 kids, by the way, young kids, and to the emergency room. And, I take them because I really care about their health. But sometimes it's very, very prohibited. If you have an issue and you need to take someone we're talking about hundreds of dollars, and some people cannot do that. Here's horrible stories of people waiting in the parking lot because they couldn't afford ER, just seeing how the kid will react and whether they would, and that's really heartbreaking. So I think, we really need to make sure that we treat our human fellows much better, that we integrate, we have, but also that we make sure that everyone has the safety that we need in terms of course, home, food, health, and so on.
Florencia, I'm just so grateful for being, having this exposure to, the depth of work that you're doing. I'm definitely going to sign up for Jeffrey Sachs book club, which I wasn't aware of, and also see some other, MOOCs or whatever that I would like to make time for in the climate arena. And I'm just wondering, given what you've shown us in terms of the latest data about achieving the SDGs, I'm wondering which ones, from your perspective, you're most hopeful about. I mean, we're not on track, obviously, but what are you hopeful for that we will achieve in less than 9 years now? We actually put 2030 in, Magnolia Moonshot 2030 in terms of as a group embracing the SDGs.
And I love that name. Let me tell you, this book, Mission Economy, is a
I wrote it down. Yeah, Mission Economy.
Mariana Mazzucato, and she's talking about these issues of moonshot, meaning like it's not, and people misunderstand the meaning of moonshot. It means like it's really a massive, enterprise that involves.
Right.
And I'm sure you had that in mind when you put that.
We did.
Your question, I have to think a bit more, honestly. I want to achieve all of the SDGs.
Well, I'm wondering what you're most hopeful about and what's keeping you up at night a little bit in terms of the track that we're on in terms of achieving this to-do list.
Yes. One that I think is so close to my heart and partly the reason why I went to law school, and then I'm sorry, like I know that we're over time, but I'm so happy that we're having this conversation.
No, we're good. We're good, and we're learning a lot.
Okay, thank you. I love to be with you, and so one of the reasons when I went to law school, mostly thinking about it's a long story, and I was when I was a teenager, I did one of these union models, and I really was drawn by the idea of human rights issues and how to solve global issues. And I went to law school because in Argentina, especially I come from Córdoba, Argentina, second city of the country, like in the middle of nowhere. It was really like a long shot to end up in the UN or anything like that. So, I went to study law because that's what your parents advise you. You should pick for a traditional career. So you were able to somehow work So I went to law school, and I actually love my experience there, but I come from the regulatory aspect and mostly from the social issues. So to me, I think, human rights issues, of course, and what I said, when you mentioned about my background with the International Center for Transitional Justice, that was a wonderful also work experience with me. I work with indigenous people issues, and I think, I'm generally very concerned about minorities, and which is interesting because I was talking to British man this morning, and I was just mentioning how oftentimes when I am in a position that we are all majority, I'm always thinking, making sure that there's no one left behind. And I was just thinking how uncomfortable it must be, sometimes for conscious man to realize that they are sometimes the only ones in the panel, and female voices are not represented, or people from different geographical or racial or race, are not represented. Anyway, so I think one is that, and I think you would think that just treating the other as they deserve, it shouldn't be such a, it shouldn't require so much investment, and should be something that's easy to do because we should respect each other. It requires a lot of investment because it requires a lot of education, for everyone to be able to examine our and examine biases. And so, that is an aspect that I am very, very, very concerned, because as we said before, we need to make sure that, first of all, we don't leave anyone behind, but also because we can achieve the SDGs unless everyone is really being able to focus on their purpose and being able to utilize their talents and develop themselves and be able to be part of the society. And unless we don't treat everyone as we should, that's...
To go back to Global Goal 5, gender equality, I remember, and this is one of the first people that I knew who was doing that. It was the woman who led Prime, or what was the umbrella for Prime? I forgot, for principles.
UN Global Compact?
Yes, who had a policy that you could not go to a conference that had panels, all male panels.
Yes. So the idea was that you would not sit on the panel unless there was diversity, and there was gender diversity, which I thought was interesting though, because I was like, if I go to the panel, then it will become, So I thought that the was a bit like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
No, but I agree. The policy was good because it was like, there should not be only male panels. And we also have that policy in SDSN. And I know sometimes it has happened sometimes that we do a lot of work to make sure that we have that diversity. And sometimes it doesn't happen, right? Because the person was not. But I think that this is a matter of, it's not just the due diligence. We do need to do our due diligence. But ultimately, it's not acceptable to have a panel that doesn't have diversity.
Right. Darcy.
Yes, so a couple of closing questions for you, Florencia. Maybe we can take down the screen share so we can see everyone.
Yes.
And the questions, we are asking these of all the women that we speak to, but the first one is, what are 3 things that you think anybody, no matter where they are in the world, could and should do? And also any advice you would have for other women and girls. We are focused on intergenerational females of all kinds. So your calls to action and any advice for us.
Okay. Wow. 3 things. Well, I mean, I really believe that what I said before, like, we need to treat each other kindly, and we need to be aware, it's really the namaste. It's like recognizing the divinity and the agency on the other human being, right? And we won't be well until everybody can enjoy what we need, right? And I mean, we're talking about, I like to say that this is also achievable, and I take a lot of inspiration from Jeffrey Sachs, that they always said like the SDGs are achievable. But anyway, so something that is not even, is like, we need to recognize the divinity, whatever that is, and the value of the other human being. And I love the human rights treaty. I think we need to bring that in our daily interactions and in our policies and so on. But even as an individual in our daily interactions, I think youth and children, need to be, treasure. We need to take care of them. We need to really, really, really love them. And, I'm really passionate about that. I have, my Liam and Luca, they're twins, twin boys, they're 3.5. And I have Lena, my 18 months old baby girl. And, they bring so much hope. They are so, kids, they're amazing. But we need to nurture them, and we need to make sure that they have the right childhood. And another one that breaks my heart even more is children around the world, as I said, we need to embrace them. But peace, we need peace, right? So how we do make that happen? It breaks my heart each time that I see adults in war zones, but even kids, that's something that I just don't think. So what we can do as individuals, I don't know. In a way that these are very important issues. But just, I would say, maybe it's related to the one, I'm sorry if everything is kind of in the same kind of bucket, but I would say question your thoughts, don't assume the worst of the other, assume the best, ask questions, just like, I think, let's not enter into war with others, right? Simple. And I'm sure if you talk to the other person, the other is a human being, there might be some common ground to be able to find. So those are kind of call to actions. And advice. I think it's everything kind of related. But I think advice to young women and girls. I think, we all need a mentor. Or mentors. Like, just get yourself very close to other women that they're, willing to share the experience, to listen, especially listen, to connect with you, to know who you are, to advise you well. We always need some boarding because that's the way that we again question our own thoughts and challenge them and really try to be a better person, a better professional, and what is our contribution, and also understand how we can connect with our purpose and make the contribution that we all need to do to feel fulfilled. So I think, yeah, just find mentors, but also be a mentor. It doesn't stay there. Even though you might think, oh, you're young, you don't have so much experience, I'm sure you can touch many other hearts. And it's really about giving as well.
It's like anytime I do mentoring, I feel like I am the mentee also.
Oh, that
really is, yeah. It's a collaboration.
Absolutely.
We learn from each other.
And that's the beauty.
Is there something that we have talked about amongst ourselves in the past? Is there, so there's these 17 beautiful interconnected SDGs. Do you think that there's anything missing? Have you thought about one that you would like to see that isn't quite in there?
Yeah. Well, I remember there were conversations, especially during the COVID time, of whether there was more about the pandemic that should have been included in advance, which I think they were in different targets. There are some things that were referred there. I guess since I tend to be like a big picture thinker, I kind of somehow, I look at this all holistically, and I am like, oh, well, this could be seen or interpreted here or there. So I was always trying to see it as a whole, meaning like, like it might not be perfect, but it's really good enough. Like, so like, but if I look at it critically, I think, like, I love SDG 16, right? And it's one that is very close to my heart. And, like peace is governance, is, human rights. I kind of think that maybe needed to be more, than one.
Yes.
Or also the spirituality. I know that, like but there is a part of the human kind of nature that I think maybe it needs a bit more, right?
Like human flourishing.
Yeah, something along those lines.
We've talked about, and actually was in
what about
a meeting about spirituality as being the one that's kind of missing. Like, how do we connect to that bigger self, or the interconnectivity?
I'm curious to know from the rest of the group. I don't know if you have other thoughts in terms of that question, which I think is.
I think Jackie has brought that up in the past. Has had us thinking about it.
Yeah, I loved your presentation, Florencia. Thank you so much. It's been such a privilege to sit here and listen to all the work that you've conducted, and fascinating to see all the courses that hopefully I will listen to some of them. I would love to. For me, divinity is a huge thing. And I think when you talked about the notion of honoring another soul, and to take the time to understand another one's perspective, it's something that I think if we do not do that, then the rest of it will not happen, quite honestly. If we do not honor each other's heart and spirit and soul, and unite in a global consciousness of humanity, then nothing else will emerge, in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here. Because I believe that our thoughts create our world, just as words create worlds. Our thoughts create our world. And I would love to see SDG 18 on some wording around that would not offend people, but would draw people together in a mission towards global understanding.
I love that.
What a beautiful wrap, Jackie. That was beautiful. Roberta, shall we bring this?
I'm just basking in the beauty of that. and really inspired to go deeper in terms of learning more about the SDGs. I'll definitely tune into, as a lifelong learner, into some of those presentations that you've brought to us, and very intrigued by the book club. So I just want to thank you, Florencia, for being with us, for being present. You are such a gift. And I really admire your work in human rights and in promoting this most important agenda for the world and teaching us about it. Is there anything that we didn't ask you about that you were expecting or that we should have asked you about and missed the opportunity?
No, I think that's perfect. I really appreciate connecting with you. I would love to spend more time with you to learn more of, because I think you're such a, beautiful group of accomplished, great women. And I love each time that I have the chance to connect with people like you. And Roberta, you are such a gift in my life. I'm so happy I met you, and through you, I'm meeting such a wonderful people as well. So I came with no expectations more than connecting and having this, kind of opportunity to exchange. And I actually was even more because I think it was like heart to heart type of, and I appreciate that. That this is not, an academic kind of just thoughts, but it's not more like thought, heart, spirit type of conversation. I enjoy that. Thanks so much.
Yeah. That's lovely. Well, I always love the Rumi quote, "The beauty you see in us is a reflection of you."
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Florencia.
What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she wears the crown? What happens when she rules her own body? What happens when she sets the beat? What happens when she bows to nobody? What happens when she stands on her own 2 feet? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she wears the crown?